皆さん、こんにちは。こんにちは。こんにちは。日本語の教室です。日本語の教室です。こんにちは。こんにちは。日本語の教室です。日本語の教室。日本語の教室。日本語の教室. So this is the standard romanization of Nihongo no kyōshitsu. I've left off the no. As I told you in the last class, this is a particle which makes a possessive. It's a commonly occurring particle in Japanese. The word particle may be new. I will introduce the concept of particles later. This is our very first particle. It makes the sixth case ending. If you were talking in terms of Sanskrit, the genitive case, if you're using Latin terms, the possessive case. Nihongo no kyōshitsu. Nihongo no kyōshitsu desu. Desu. Nihongo no kyōshitsu desu. This is our Japanese classroom. Classroom. Kyōshitsu. I've chosen to use classroom rather than class. Class would be jugyo. Jugyo. We will enter that word into our active vocabulary later. For the time being, we're using kyōshitsu, which is a classroom. Nihongo no kyōshitsu desu. I've shown you the Chinese characters for kyōshitsu. As you can see, it's very complex. Kyo means to teach. Shitsu is a room. And there's a little cap on top of the shitsu. It has a line at the left with a line on the top, and it makes kind of the roof to a house. Kyoshitsu. It's like a crown. It's called a crown in Japanese. Kyoshitsu. So Chinese characters are divided into segments. The first character, like Nihongo, is a complete character of its own. And hon is actually a radical plus another line to change the meaning. I'm going to talk about radicals later. The radicals are what classify Chinese characters. So we could also call them classifiers. Nihongo. Nihongo no go is, you could divide that into a left-hand side and a right-hand side. Once again, I'll show that to you later. Nihongo no kyōshitsu desu. Kore wa Nihongo no kyōshitsu desu. Yokoso. Welcome back. Okay, welcome back to our Japanese class. At the very beginning, what did I say? I said, minasan konnichiwa, 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 konnichiwa. So the first hiragana that you see there is ko. This font is not the most beautiful font that I could have chosen. I chose it because it was nice and bold and it stands out on the picture. However, it almost looks like, I'm actually going to do some handwriting today. It looks like it could join together almost to form a te. So when you're writing and reading, you have to be careful because there are certain similarities. So this almost looks like a te. It could be a te, right? A te. Because you can see how this comes down like that, and then this one comes up almost to meet it. So this should actually, I would just write it like this. Okay? And it can also become confused with e, which is one of the characters that we're going to learn in more detail today. Okay? Konnichiwa, konnichiwa. So that ko can be a little bit confusing. I don't recommend learning to write using print. There's plenty of examples on the internet, and we'll get into this in more detail. You're not going to become beautiful. I know that I've had students that have beautiful handwriting. They obviously have very good hand-eye coordination. I'm not one of those people. I actually write with my left hand, which is 3 strikes against me to begin with. So don't be too concerned about your handwriting, but you must know that people are judged by their handwriting in Japan. Not as much today as they used to be. Slowly, everything is being replaced by computers, much to everybody's dismay, correct? Okay, konnichiwa. Ko, and is held equally as long as the ko. It's a totally independent syllable. Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa. So, ko, ni, chi, wa. And as you remember the last time as we were going through the chart, the chi is actually in the T column. Ta, we could read it ta, ti, tu, te, to, ta, ti, tu, te, to, but the Japanese never pronounce ti as t. They always pronounce it as chi. Ta, chi, tsu, te, to. And so the CHI is the traditional way of spelling this in our romanization system. Konnichiwa. So you're going to see this. I had a friend once, a young man that lived in Japan as a very young boy. I think he learned his Japanese mainly by books, because he always said, konnichiwa, konnichiwa. That sounds really bad, konnichiwa. You need to pause over both of those N's. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, konnichiwa. Now you might be asking yourself, why am I saying wa when the hiragana is ha? This is the ha hiragana. You see a little stroke going upward. Let's see. So if I'm writing that like that, I think that it would be written like that. I don't know if that's backwards or if you're, anyway, we'll see when I, okay. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, konnichiwa. And it simply means, the wa is another particle. Now we have particle number 2. Particle number 2. Particle 1 was no, which is to indicate a possessive. Particle number 2 is wa, and that is to denote the topic of the conversation. Konnichiwa. So really what we have here is an incomplete sentence. Konnichiwa. And konnichi means, actually, literally, it means today, this day. Remember when I was explaining to you, Nihon can also be Nippon. The word for ni or nichi means the sun, or it can mean a day. Most commonly, it's used to mean day. There's a totally different way of saying sun in Japanese. Taiyo, taiyo. This is nichi or ni. Nihon or nippon. Nippon. So this is the same nichi. Konnichiwa, konnichiwa, konnichiwa. And this could actually be written in kanji, but we typically write it in hiragana. Later on, I'll show you the kanji. It's the same as this day here. The second one, the nichi, is written using this kanji. Okay, konnichiwa. And this is the only spelling exception. Actually, there are 2 spelling exceptions in Japanese. Japanese spelling is very, very basic, but here we have an exception. The ha becomes wa only when it's a particle. And the particle means that this is the topic of our conversation today. Today. And you greet each other saying, today, today. Konnichiwa. Maybe today is going to be a great day. Or today, it's wonderful to see you. It's kind of lost that meaning, but there is a very typical Japanese tendency to say incomplete thoughts and to let their listener fill it in. The Japanese themselves like to say that they like to be vague. So konnichiwa is your introduction to Japanese vagueness. But don't take it that far. It just means hello. Konnichiwa. And it's used basically during the daytime hours. Konnichiwa. It's not widely used, actually, especially amongst your friends. You might say konnichiwa to a stranger that you're passing on the road, somebody you're meeting you don't know very well. You can say it to a friend, but usually with a friend there's other little niceties that you're going to exchange with them when you first meet. But obviously, konnichiwa is already known in India, it's worldwide known, and it's always translated as hello. Konnichiwa. Okay. And here we have it, konnichiwa, which you often see. It can be written in hiragana or kanji, but it's usually written in kanji. I went on to the internet just to make sure about that, because nowadays you often see it written in kanji. And I think one of the reasons is that people are getting used to using the word processor. They're getting used to using computers to write. And with a computer, the kanji comes up very easily. And it looks cool. It's a little hard. And one of the things that I read on the internet said, it can be confused with kyo, because kyo means today, and kyo is also usually written in hiragana, but kyo uses the exact same kanji. Kyo means today, konnichi also means today. Kyo is the softer native Japanese way to say it, and konnichi is the more scholarly, the more bookish Chinese way to say it. So Chinese words are generally hard words. Japanese words are soft words. Konnichiwa, I guess would be a hard word, but it's it's not all that. It's a fairly formal way of saying hello. Kyou wa means that you're going to propose something that's going on today. It has no sense of hello at all. Kyou wa nihongo o benkyou shimasu. Kyou wa nihongo o manabimasu. Today we're going to learn Japanese today. Kyou wa nanyobi deshou ka? Kyou wa, what day is today? I think it's Wednesday, but of course when you watch this, it could be any day. So what I did was I typed konnichiwa, hiragana, or kanji into Google, and I got several blogs. A lot of these were written by amateurs, but some of them I felt were very good, very interesting. So you get a whole bunch of information on the internet these days. One reader said that sometimes the women will write that wa with the traditional katakana wa, a totally different wa than the one you see here. You'll have to look at your hiragana chart to know which wa that is. So that's way over at the far left. Remember, we started over at the right. We'll be looking at this hiragana chart momentarily. At any rate, to be cute, young girls especially might replace that wa with the correct pronunciation of the wa. But this is the correct way to write konnichiwa. I found this website, and this website would basically be my competition, I think. But I'm going to go to him to get grammar points. And you can just remember this as JapaneseProfessor.com. I found that it was a very well organized, very well designed website. And if you want to go to the greetings and other expressions section, greetings and other expressions, it has a very thorough explanation of greetings. We're going to introduce this slowly. And our first one is konnichiwa. Okay. The one that I've been using for the long time is Guide to Japanese. This is by a Mr. Tai Kim. Tai Kim. He spells his name Taekim. And Kim, of course, is a very common Korean name. Tai Kim has his web page is one of the most prominent web pages if you do a Google search, and there's a good reason for it. It's an old web page, and it has been very sharply honed, and I have a lot of respect for Mr. Tai Kim. He provides a lot of materials for free. He's obviously a very, very dedicated Japanese scholar. But this JapaneseProfessor.com, I don't remember the name of the man. I just ran across it yesterday, and it's also very good. Once again, I encourage you to peruse the internet. Here, once again, is our hiragana chart, reviewing the recording from yesterday. I found out that this box down here, where I am, actually covered the na and the o, and maybe part of the ko. At any rate, you couldn't see it very well. I'm very partial to this. I could have shrunk it a little bit or done something, but I also have another chart which I like very much. So today we're going to look at this chart. A, I, U, E, O, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, sa, shi, su, se, so, ta, chi, tsu, te, to, na, ni, nu, ne, no, ha, hi, hu, he, ho, ma, mi, mu, me, mo, ya, yu, yo, ra, ri, ru, re, do, wa, o, and n. Now we were just talking about the wa. When wa is a particle, it's written using the ha. The ha is right here, ha. Ha, hi, hu, he, ho. But some people go back to the wa sound. This is not correct to write konnichiwa with a wa, even though it's pronounced with a wa. This particle, wa, is called a topic marker. This particle, no, is called a possessive marker. It indicates that whatever it follows is modifying somehow the noun that follows. Nihongo no kyosutsu. What kind of kyosutsu is it? It's a Japanese kyosutsu. So Nihongo is a noun, kyosutsu is a noun. So to join those two nouns, you need a no in between. Whatever goes before that no is modifying what comes after it. That's the best explanation of the functioning of no. The best explanation of wa is whatever comes before the wa is going to be the topic of conversation following. And basically, you don't need to repeat that. You'll find that many Japanese textbooks will repeat watashi wa, I, because they're trying to imitate English. The Japanese tendency is to drop pronouns altogether. So, watashi wa Amerikajin desu. Nihongo no sensei. Indo ni sunde imasu. So I say watashi wa once. Don't even need to say it once because you all see me. You all know that I'm the person talking. So if I don't say anything, then of course I'm talking about myself. Okay. So a, I, U, A, O. These five letters are the letters that we're going to concentrate on today. A, I, U, E, O. Some of these other letters may come up. We've already seen. So A is like ahiru. Ahiru. This is rather small here. Since you're not used to reading hiragana, you can barely see it. You can see that it's written in English over here, or romaji. And it also has the katakana. So this is a delightful chart. You can find it online. I found it a long time ago, so I don't remember where I found it. Hopefully it's in the public domain. I imagine it is, but if not, somebody's going to come and tell me about it, and I'll have to make a change. Ahiru, duck. Inu. There's the inu. Down here it's written in hiragana. Most animal names are written in katakana. I don't know why. Maybe inu, dogs, animals that are very domestic and that we really love, we might tend to write in hiragana. And there's also some kanji for the animals. But kanji are not so popular when it comes to writing animal names. Ahiru, inu. Ushi, the sacred cow. Ushi. Ushi. And then ebi, shrimp. Ebi. And then way over here we have hebi. I try not to tell too many stories, but this is one of my favorites. I'll tell it early in the game. I started translating in the state of Indiana in 1989. And one of my first assignments was to take my team out for a St. Patrick's Day celebration. St. Patrick's Day is, of course, one of the most popular Irish celebrations, and it represents a very famous Irish saint who was said to have taken all of the snakes away from Ireland. And I was trying to explain this to my Japanese friends, and I was using the word ebi rather than hebi. And my Japanese friends politely listened, and then after a while they said to me, why would he be famous for taking the taking the shrimp outside of Ireland? Because of course the Japanese love shrimp. I was saying ebi rather than hebi. Ebi. So ebi is shrink. Ama ebi is it's a little raw shrimp, a tiny little shrimp that is often on a sushi plate. It's one of the favorite sushi items in a Japan sushi restaurant. Ebi. Ama ebi. Okay, and then this one is a parrot. Omu. O-u-mu. Omu. A-I-U-E-O. Kaki kuke ko. Sashi suse so, etc., etc. Okay, I think there's nothing more to say about this chart. So let's go on and learn how to write the A. This is the letter A. And as I told you before, it's always written inside a square. So we need to nicely proportion it. The reason that we have the quadrants there is just to show you that the first stroke is a rather short stroke, and more of the stroke is to the left than to the right, because the third stroke is going to be a nice big stroke that really makes up most of the character. It really squares out the character. It proportions the character nice. So you need to practice making this nice and big and rounded. Let's see, nice and big and rounded. Like this, nice big rounded. So actually it's not bad practice to write it in the air. Ah. You get a very physical feeling for how this ah is written. And of course, it's 3 strokes. That last stroke is a nice big stroke. So, what I encourage my students to do, one time I gave them an assignment saying to write the first 5 hiragana 100 times each. It sounds like a punishment. Remember how I said in the last lesson that learning this language should be like you're back in primary school learning to write. I don't know how many of you can remember learning how to write in primary school. It was a lot of effort. It took a long time to really be able to make nicely shaped letters. I know that in my school, penmanship was very important. I always got good grades in school, but I fell a little bit short in penmanship because I didn't follow the line, and I did many things wrong when I did penmanship. So we're going to practice a little penmanship. Write this a lot of times. You may not want to write it 100 times. You're going to be writing it a lot in the future. We've got computers. I've told you to make an Excel spreadsheet if you want to. But basically, you've got to write. I told you that before. So I'm going to write for you on this piece of paper that I had for you before. We're going to write. This is a pen. It's a paint marker. I bought this pen in Japan about 2 years ago. It writes on metal. We use this in the factory works place, in this automobile assembly plant, to mark all the nuts and bolts to prove that they had been tightened. So this marks on metal. I use it to mark my metal cups, or my tiffin. I have a tiffin here. I've given up on it because it wears off after time. But anyway, I bought this in order to write on my tiffins. Now it's just become an ordinary marker. So get one of your favorite pens. You can get a big marker and mark it big. Go ahead and waste a little bit of paper. Make this an enjoyable experience. When you're outside, go ahead and use your toe to write it in the sand. You need to eat and breathe Japanese in order to really learn it. And it's not easy to do in a foreign environment. So I'm going to take my pen once again, turn around a bit here, make sure that you can see it, and I'm going to write an ah. Okay, ah, and then the line here coming down like that. And then I'm going to nicely proportion it with this nice big loop. Okay, that doesn't look so good. I probably should have brought it down around here a little bit more. That would make it look better. This line probably should have been a bit shorter. So critique yourself, compare it to what you have. There, that's a bit better. Yeah. So I write it 100 times. Okay. Ah, ah, ah. And do the same for E. Now we're going to be looking at the E momentarily. You're going to see that the E has a little hook on it. The E has a little hook on it. Once again, this is the brush, but you don't want to... I had a few students because the ri looks like this. And if you're not careful, this ends up looking like a ri. Like I said, this and the E and the ko can sometimes be confused if you're not careful. So you have to be... There's a few other characters that will get confused. The ah and the o. The o is also starts out like this and goes around like that and then has a line up here. So it's a little bit different than the ah, but it's basically the same strokes. We're going to see a few more down the road, but I just want to make this writing clear from the end. As we go on, I'm not going to walk you through this as much. You really need to be looking at these yourselves and learning to write them by yourself. Plenty of material online. I got this off of Wikipedia. This is publicly available, open source material, I think they call it. And To me, these are one of the most beautiful examples of a Japanese font because they have a lot of the brush writing characteristics. Freely available on Wikipedia. Wikipedia also has animations. And I'm going to show you that I chose not to use the animations because they have a few problems. There may be better animations I could have found, but I'm going to point to one of the problems. Actually, I might as well, no, I'm going to wait until we get through the a, I, u, e, o. The ki and the sa are big problems, which I will talk to you about in just a minute. Once again, the e, so the brush goes down, and then you kind of pick the brush up, and there's a lot of, you actually hold the brush. I was told to pretend that you have an egg inside your hand, and you hold it straight up and down. So even though I'm a left-hander, when I learned to do some brush writing, I decided to use my right hand. I have a feeling I may have originally been a right-hander. My mother always used to say that I did this out of stubbornness. At any rate, I am a left-hander, but I write with a brush with my right hand because the muscles are different. Everything is different, and you have to apply pressure in the right difference, and then let up on the pressure, and then taper out like that. And you basically try to imitate this with a pen. So this left-hand side should be longer than the right-hand side. And of course, I have the square to indicate that. The u is quite easy. We have at the top of the u what we call a ten, and or a dot, a ten. Ten means dot or point. To make a point, これはiten desu. Iten. This is one point that I'm going to make. Iten. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was actually going to go over that today. I think I'll go back to our little chart here because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 that we're going to learn today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to write them yet. I wanted to point out that there are 2 counting systems in Japanese to make Japanese counting a little bit problematic. Now that I know it, I find it very useful, very pleasant. There's a principle behind it which is a little difficult to catch. We are going to go through this during our first few months of learning Japanese. We want to learn how to count. Basically, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the Chinese pronunciation. 1, 2, 3. In fact, san is almost the same in Chinese and Japanese. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the native Japanese is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 5. Even I hesitate a little bit. The Japanese, to me, 8 and 4 sound very much alike, and I haven't gotten over that in all of these years. So I must say, but you especially will use 1, 2 and 4, 5, and probably 3, 4, 5, 5, I'm just not comfortable with, but notice that they all end with tsu. Okay, so this is your introduction to Japanese counting. So, これは u. And I started out telling you about the 10. The 10. 1点、2点、3点、4点。1, 2, 3, 4. She sounds a lot like the word for death. So the Japanese have a tendency not to use it. In some cases, you have to use it. For example, the months in Japanese are just numbered. They don't have names for the month in Japanese. So you have ichigatsu for January, ichigatsu, nigatsu, sangatsu, yongatsu, shigatsu, yongatsu no, shigatsu. Shigatsu is April. Shigatsu is always April. So there's yon. Yon seems to be the more commonly used one. If you look it up on the internet, you'll see charts that list both the shi and the yon. Ichi, ni, san, shi, go, roku, shichi, hachi, kyu, ju, 1 through 10. Today we're just going to learn ichi, ni, san, maybe shi, maybe go. That's enough. I mentioned that I had purchased a copy of Rosetta Stone. They teach 6 numbers at first, and they do a very good job of drilling the numbers. I'll try to do the same. We're going to learn how to say your birth date in numbers, your telephone number, etc. But for now, we can count the strokes. There's ichi, ni. 1, 2 strokes for u. And the u, if you're not careful, might look like a ra. But anyway, so the u and e. Look at the dot on the a. They've maybe somehow brought the brush out. They didn't do that on the u because the u is formed quite a bit differently. If you notice, on the u they have a nicely shaped teardrop because you're going this way and then you start way down here. It's for some reason with the A, you're starting up closer to the dot, so they want to show that you just draw your pen out and come over to the A. So it's kind of interesting the way they do things. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert at calligraphy at all. So once again, draw that A as many times as you can. This one's a bit easier to shape. Okay. You can be writing as I set up to write. Okay. A. So we make a line coming down like that. It looks more like that. It's up to you. You can look at other examples of handwriting, which are on the internet. And you can see that this has a nice, like that. I might draw it like that, but that's not as pretty. It looks like a Z. Of course, it's not a Z. It's an A. A, E, U, E. A, E, U, E. And then finally, we have O. And as I showed you earlier, that's very much like the A. Both A and O have 3 strokes. However, the O only has 1 vertical stroke. The A had 2 vertical strokes, if you can recall that. A, I, U, E, O. Okay. Let's see, I wanted to show you. No. Let's go. Yes, I wanted to show you the key. Notice how the key here, oh, this might be, I'm going to have to, okay. The key here, I think that the animation is down where my picture box is. So I'm going to have to modify that a little bit. I think I'll just modify that while I've got you on here. This will be the first time that I leave my slideshow. I think in our next class, I'm going to start out on my computer and show you how to install a Japanese keyboard. So right now, I will escape from this. Whoops. There we go. Okay, we're escaping. And we're going to go down to this key. Get this up here. And we're going to move this up here because it's interfering. Okay, we'll go back to the slideshow. Okay, so we have the key here. Notice how the key, also once again, the we have 1, 2, and then 3. Now remember the principle of going from the upper left-hand corner down to the lower right-hand corner. But first we start out with here. We go along here and then gradually make our way over here. So for the first stroke to the left, the highest stroke is over here. So that's why that comes number 1. Even though this is closer to the top, it's further to the right. It's more central. Look how it crosses the center of the quadrant. You have dead center here. You've tried to make this a square stroke. So you have ich, ni, san, shi, ich. Now I'm saying ich. I can say ichi or I can say ich. Often when they're counting, the Japanese will say ich, but it's ichi. So sometimes these final letters get sucked in, they disappear. Ich, ni, san, ichi, ni, san, ich, ni, san. Especially when you're doing something very athletic. Ich, ni, san, it's much more clipped. Ichi, ni, san is a little bit softer. Okay, so ichi, ni, san, sanban me no sen wa chotto hook ga tsuitemasu. I don't know the Japanese terminology. I'm even thinking I don't know the Japanese terminology for stroke. So, but this is the first stroke, the second stroke, and the third stroke. Has a little bit of a hook on it to imitate the brush. And then it has this final stroke at the bottom. Now, if you see something printed, these are often joined. For printing, it was more convenient to join them. That way it was all just one piece and it was easier to form for your printing purposes. You'll notice that for the Latin script, the printed G is quite different from the handwritten G. The printed A is different from the handwritten A. There are people that like to write the A like the printed A. But really in Japanese, it looks bad. This is why I don't like the animation. I believe this is also a Wikipedia animation here. Look how it just joins it together. That's why I decided not to use animations. Now there are some animations that are much better than this, but you'll often see this printed. No matter how many times I tell my students not to do it this way, invariably half of them do. I think half of them don't study, and they just copy off of their friends that study. I don't know. At any rate, we will see how this goes offline. Hopefully, whatever this takes, whatever, I may be able to ask you to do homework assignments and write these 100 times. Okay, so back to our story. Okay, I guess I'm ready to show you this paper. This will be a really quick thing. This is official, it's called Genshi. Genshi, it's a kind of template. If you're writing something, you want to submit an article to the newspaper, for example. The newspaper wants to know how many characters there are going to be in your article. Well, here they have exactly 400. There are 400 squares here, 20 down and 20 across. So this is probably the most standard type of yoshi. Genshi, yoshi. I've forgotten it. I'll have to look it up again. I used to be able to say this, but anyway, this is a type of paper that's used for writing drafts. And you can see that it has the traditional bookbinding. This is where you would write the title of the thing, and then that way when it got bound into a book, it would show it on the book back. I think that's the purpose of that middle area. So this is an old method. I'm sure that these two lines at the top serve some purpose for somebody that may be doing a, I think if you try to photocopy this, it may just disappear. The lines may be written in such an ink that it disappears, or if you make a photograph of it. I'm not sure. But here you have, now here you have lines down the side. You can write in the pronunciation. Let's look at this. So here we have an example. We have a kanji here. We have a mo, na, ka, ta. There's something above there. It got disappeared. Got disappeared. What kind of English is that? It disappeared. This is a kanji. Okay, and then you have heisei 23 nen. All of these are in kanji. And heisei 23 nen is the year 23 of the Heisei era. We just left the Heisei era last year or the year before in April. I think it was last year. Not positive about that. This is either, so, and the new era, as you remember, for the first time in history, they changed imperial eras while the emperor was still alive. The current emperor, or the former emperor, abdicated in favor of his son. First time in history. So the new imperial era is called Dewa. So, and then before that was Showa. Showa Heisei. The Showa era was the longest era in Japanese history. It was the era of Hirohito, who was the emperor that fought World War II. He was allowed to live by the occupation forces and went on to serve a long, long term. And I was born in Showa 30, 1955 was Showa 30. And I believe it was Showa 63 or 64 when the Showa emperor finally died. That was in 1989. And then we had a new era called Heisei. Heisei era. Heisei. So my point is, you could write this in hiragana right next to it. Hei would be he-i. Let's see, I have a pen writing capability. I'm going to try to use that. I'm going to write with a pen. Okay. So I can write hey. Oh man. Hey. Say. I'm not very good with my mouse. Let's see if I can do a better job with the A this time. No, I'm not doing a good job with it. Heisei, ni. This is the kanji for ni. Ichi, ni. Is there any ichi? There's another ni over here. Oh no, that's gu, ni, chu, do. This looks like it might be katakana. Katakana is easily confused. Okay, let's see. Oh, now I've lost the pointer altogether. Okay, we're done with that. Anyway, you can write, it's called furigana. So that's why this memo yoshi, or this yoshi, or whatever, genshi yoshi, I can't remember. This piece of paper that is used. So you can see it traditionally written from, okay. Traditionally written from the top right downward like this. This would be the traditional way of writing. And this type of yoshi is still in use. When we get into using the computer, I'll show you that they even make duplicates of the yoshi on their computers so that they can still present things in this traditional yoshi way. Okay, so now, Nihongo no kyōshitsu. We're going to, boy, we only have another 15 minutes. I'm going a bit slower than I planned, which is fine. We'll have more than enough time. We'll do a lot of drilling. what is written at the top? Nihongo no kyosutsu, Nihongo no kyosutsu. Okay, so what's that letter? We've all learned it by now. It's the A. And the purpose of this slide is to show you that we can already write words. We have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters. And they're the 5 vowels. A, I, U, E, O. A, I, U, E, O. A, I, U, E, O. Kaki, ku, ke, ko. Sashi, su, se, so. Tachi, tsu, te, do, etc. So we have the A. With just the A, I, U, E, O, we can write this word. Owl. 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 And owl means blue. Owl. Owl. Owl means blue. Owl. I didn't write this in Romaji. I think you know how to write it in Romaji. You probably want to start a word list for colors, for example. I'm teaching you a new color. Owl. Also, there's the owl again. If I put an E onto it, it turns a noun into an adjective. So this is the adjective for blue. Okay. This is the color blue. Blue is not an adjective, it's blue. This is blue. It's a noun, blue. Okay. But if I say it's a blue color, then suddenly blue becomes an adjective. When we form an adjective in Japanese, we add an E to the noun. So ao becomes aoi, aoi, aoi. Kore wa, aoi, aoi clip desu. Kore wa clip. There may be a special word for clothespin, but I'm using the word clip. Kore wa aoi clip desu, aoi. So aoi can directly join the clip. This is your first exposure to adjectives. So ao is the noun, and ao iro, you can also say ao iro means a blue color, ao iro, but ao and aoi is just generally by itself. It's a noun and an adjective. Okay, here we have a again. Now we're going to join it to u. Now notice here that I showed you that they didn't have that little line going away from it. Here they have the line going away from it. So this is a different font. My computer has several different fonts on it. I tend to like the lighter, cheerier fonts. These may not be the most popular. In fact, I think this was a Chinese font, at any rate. Chinese font. The name was Chinese. Of course, this is pure Japanese. The Chinese don't know this hiragana at all. Ao. And ao is a verb which means to meet. Ao. To meet. Okay? And then we have I, also meaning to meet. Ao means to meet, and I means. Actually, I means just. So ao is called the dictionary form of the verb. So you may want to start a verb list, and ao is going to be the first verb on your list. And I is the verb stem. Japanese verbs conjugate, which means that the Japanese words change form. We say that Japanese is a highly inflected language. When we say something is inflected, it means it changes in forms. It goes through various conjugations. This adjective will also change. If it was blue today was blue yesterday, but it's green today, we would say aokata. It sounds strange to put it in the past, but anyway, the adjectives conjugate. Aimashou, aimashou. Let's meet. Aimashou, aimashou. Aimasu. We do meet. We meet every day. Aimasu. 週1回会います。週1回、1回、2回、3回、4回、5回、1回、2回、3回、4回、5回. Is everybody repeating with me? Notice that I said the yon instead of she. With kai, which means times, ikkai. It's not ichikai, because there's a rule that when you join a ichi into a hard sound, the tsug, the ichi gets lost and turns into that hard sound itself. So ikkai. Pong is also a hard sound. Nippon. Okay. Ikkai. Ni. Ichi ni. Nikai. Sankai. Yonkai. The is a soft sound, so the k doesn't change. Yonkai. Yonkai. Gokai. Okay. So, aimasu, we meet. Aimashou, let's meet. So see how the verb changes, the ending. In order to put an ending onto ao, which is the dictionary form of the verb, if you wanted to look something up in the dictionary, you will not find I in the dictionary. You might find I, the meanings you might find would be for love or something like that. Remember last time I mentioned I being love, aishitemasu, which was not used by the Japanese. Ao, okay, aimashou. Okay, so the dictionary form and the stem form. So there's two forms. So here we have a and e and u and o. A, e, u. The only one we don't have is a. And I, a. I don't think there's anything used with the a, I. So that's why I didn't include it. So this is all the words that you can form starting with a or a, and then the vowels following them. So we have really the noun blue, the adjective blue, the dictionary form of meet, and the stem form of meet are 4 words that we can form using just 4 different letters. Okay, now we're going to look at words that start with E. A, E, U, E, O. E. 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 So this is a lengthened E. One E by itself is read E. 2 E's together is read E. E. So you have to hold it for 2 beats. E. E. Okay. E is an adjective just like owl, aoi, aoi, aoi. It's an adjective. It ends with an I. Now, not all words that end with I are adjectives, but we have 2 types of adjectives in Japanese, actually, the e-adjectives and the na-adjectives. So this is E, which means, here I have it written, and you have 2 ways to write E. You can just imitate the Japanese, or you can write the macron. And when you're inputting into the computer, you're going to have to write the E twice. But if you see it written in a book, you might see a macron over it. And E happens to mean, oh dear. Okay, well, we'll get into that later. I'm going to ignore that for the time being. E means good. Good. Now, E can also be written yoi. Yoi. And I told you that adjectives are conjugated. They are inflected. So E is something that's good right now. Something that was good yesterday is yokatta. Yokatta. It was good, yokatta. You'll hear yokatta used so many times in Japanese. Ah, yokatta. you're heaving a sigh of relief, and it's actually still good, but you're thinking of something that happened just a few seconds ago, or maybe yesterday, and it's, I'm glad now that everything was good then. It's a strange expression, but very common. So e is only used in the present tense. The rest of the forms, which we will be studying later, are using yoi. Yoi. Okay, we have e, u, you. And this is a verb meaning to say, you. It's the dictionary form. The stem is e. Just like with ao, to meet, the u gets changed into an e and becomes the stem form. With the stem form, we can add suffixes. For example, imasu, imashou, imashita, imasen. These are various verb forms that all attach to the stem form, e, imasu, you, to say. So both of these are very frequently used in Japanese. Okay. Ie is a house. Ie is a house. And here we have a house with maybe the mother and father in it. Yeah, I think the man is on the left. Traditional Japanese tatami room. I think that we're going to quit for today. At this point, I think it's been about an hour. And I think this is a good place to stop. So in the next lesson, we're just going to continue. I did have ie, but unfortunately, that is covered by my face, and you can't see that, so I need to make a change to that. So we're going to stop with this slide here today, and I'm going to say to you, sayonara, sayonara, goodbye, mata aimashou, mata aimashou, mata aimashou, ao aimashou, let's meet again, mata aimashou, ao, let's meet again. A very common way to say goodbye. Mata aimashou, mata aimashou, mata aimashou. Sayonara. じゃあね、また会いましょう。また会いましょう。さよなら、さよなら。Goodbye.